Hello, I'm Drew Roth, a senior here at Humboldt State University. Today, we'll be showing you the efforts of the students in Dr. Reitzel's Fall Semester 2019 Communication 490, the Capstone experience, in creating and performing a manuscript speech as part of the Communication Perspectives project. We hope you enjoy the fruits of many hours of research and speech writing and come away enlightened by the topics we wish to shed light on.
We have roughly 12 years to save the planet. My name is Lupita Rivera, and at this point I'm pretty sure we've all heard that phrase or something like it, and in many ways it's useful in alerting people of the urgency of the situation. But there's also a strong danger that it will be misunderstood and or misrepresented. What it doesn't mean is that we have 12 years before we have to act. It means that we have to be critical of our interaction with the natural environment. And so today, I'm going to try to encourage you to understand that our human identities are more interconnected to the natural environment than we give credit. I'll be using Richard Rogers' theory of the materiality of nature to critically analyze the creation of national parks as problematic for our symbolic understanding of natural spaces. I'll also look at the federal government's involvement in these natural spaces, and then address the growing concern over the commodification of environmental movements. So the communication discipline looks at the symbols that shape our existence. We ascribe symbolic value to the space around us, and this often translates the natural space around us to be something constructed by us, therefore for us. Now, this is destructive for obvious reasons, and Richard Rogers argues that we have to look at nature as having an active part in shaping our human experiences, our perceptions, and our overall definitions of reality. Even though we are symbolic creatures that create our own reality, we have to recognize the extent of our inseparability from nature. So we've separated our symbolic existence from the natural environment, and as a result, we've commodified nature. And commodification is the action of commercializing this thing. And so one of the ways that we've done this is the creation and conservation of national parks. Now, the commodification of national parks appropriates the value of natural spaces because their intent is to conserve the scenery and the values of these parks in ways that will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. Now, in their 2016 research, Communication and Environmental Conservation, Advancements and Challenges in Latin America, Núñez and Moreno help us understand the active role that nature has in shaping our human experiences. They argue that environmental communication is related to citizen participation and that it strengthens the bonds of communities in a collaborative effort to conserve the protected areas. Now, in the instance of national parks, the level of participation is material in the aesthetic elements that we seek to protect. We're cautious about destroying these protected areas because we want to preserve their aesthetic value. The implications here are that spaces outside of these national parks are not natural enough to protect. Now, this self-centered outlook on the natural environment greatly influences the commodification that we end up participating in. So why is it that we choose to sections of this natural space to protect, rather than just protecting the space that we exist in as a whole? Now, the degrees of environmental exploitation go way beyond these superficial aesthetic appreciations for national parks. The deliberative ways that the federal government exploits indigenous land is a direct result in our perception that this innovative technology is superior to the respect that the natural space deserves. So from a website called Dakota Access Pipeline Facts, we learned that the pipeline has created more than 80,000 North Dakota jobs and has brought hundreds of millions of dollars of investment into the area. And what this implies is that environmental degradation of the area is justified by the economic benefits of this human-made technology. And so McCurdy 2018 claims that the media's portrayal of this exploitation reflects our justifications for these destructive practices. So long as human innovation is at the center of it, it's fine, right? Well, ecofeminist perspective calls for us to recognize that the exploitation of indigenous land is tied to environmental practices that are meant to silence the very voices it affects. By claiming that this pipeline is beneficial for the economy, particularly how many jobs it has created, we're favoring the white entities that benefit from it. Yet it's the indigenous people in the area who will have to deal with the social and environmental malpractices of this quote-unquote technology. So shifting gears just a little bit, I want to address why commodification and the dangers it poses for environmentalism. And so when we've placed systemic change in the hands of the public and we've neglected to hold corporations accountable for the alarming levels of damage that they're responsible for, those who identify as environmentalists take initiative to reduce their impact by purchasing products that label them as environmentally friendly. You know, oftentimes the commercialization of this environmentalist identity has shifted the conversation to what the consumer can do to minimize harms rather than hold corporations accountable for the damages they are causing. And so, unfortunately, the commercialization of the environmental movement has muted the more important conversation. Why are corporations not being held accountable for the damages that they have caused? And so, as discussed, the commodification of nature is laced with racist undertones and it's super exploitative in nature. You know, it prevents us from achieving true levels of change. We're valuing the environment for its aesthetic and commercial value. Now, more than ever, we have to be more critical of our advocacy. We have roughly 12 years to save the planet, and we have to recognize that the first step in doing so is reflecting on our interpersonal relationship with the natural space that we coexist in.
Hi, I'm Blake Abeln, and I'd like to share with you my methods of mycology. Fungi have been an integral part of the forest since their origins, developing symbiotic relationships with land plants. Until recently, the extent of these relationships, known as mycorrhiza, has been widely undiscovered. These studies have shown that mycorrhizal associations will improve seedling abundance, decrease foliage damage, and protect against pathogens, all aiding in reforestation. Responses to forest pests have rationalized the use of chemical pesticides in the last century. This is due to the availability and subsidization of these chemicals, leading to a lack of pursuing more sustainable methods despite the consequences. The issue of insufficient mycological research impacts forests directly. Political affiliations with chemical-producing companies have deviated the United States from pursuing proper sustainable research approaches to forest management. Recent research gives hope to the field of mycology in discerning mycelium and pathogens as viable forms of combating forest health issues. This involves two types of symbiotic relationships: ECM, ectomycorrhizal, and arbuscular, AM. While the ECM fungi will form a protective layer around roots, AM will protrude the roots and fix various dissolved nutrients from the soil into the roots, as well as aiding in decomposition of surrounding tissues. Increased research into these associations have boundless potential for assisting in reforestation, methods of which are becoming increasingly understood and practiced, illustrated by Volante Barantes in 2017 stating, "They suggest that simple measurements of basal area combined with mycorrhizal and phylogenetic classifications can provide important information about the representation of species below ground. Therefore, determining mycorrhizal associations is becoming more attainable." Mycological advocates such as Paul Stamets are leading exploratory actions to discover the extent that fungus can propel the sustainability of planet Earth. His research has created revolutionary pesticide approaches using mycelium to infect pests. Fungus is one of the main contributors that drives the carbon cycle on Earth and is vital for the health of the forests. He compares the internet to webs of mycelium regarding their ability to net, connect, and share biological information. His discoveries and research have fostered a new resurgence of mycologists through a mission to deconstruct the misconceptions and incite a long love of fungus in the world. Focusing on the mycological approaches to forest management have enormous implications. Research by Bachelot in 2018 found that the presence of the 12 most common AM fungi was predicted to be correlated with low early successional seedling abundance, high mid-successional seedling abundance, and a low amount of foliar damage on mid and late successional species. Understanding and incorporating this research is a key element in the future of forest management, along with eradicating the use of chemical pesticides and other compounds. Unlike chemical compounds, fungi create an environment ripe for vegetation and creates viable minerals through the production of humus. Insect pests, such as the gypsy moth, have devastated old-growth forests globally, most notably in Japan and North America. Recently, efforts of pathologists in Japan have deciphered a means of combating this pest. Notably, there is a specific entomopathogenic fungus which has been introduced as a natural biocontrol of the gypsy moth, and several studies are focused on the pathogenicity or effectiveness against this harmful insect forest pest. These pathological approaches have largely been effective against large populations of gypsy moths and create no alternative effects that chemical pesticides often do. The impact of fungus on the forest is readily apparent, but research into fungus has also discovered packaging that is sustainable and has an ability to change our cultural production practices in a completely different manner. After finding an article claiming to make mycelium-based packaging material, I was intrigued. Corona states in 2018, the present paper explored a journey, a master's product design student who searched for a product application idea for mycelium-based materials. From this discovery, I pursued to find companies producing and using this type of packaging. The products are completely replacing the need for plastic-based styrofoam, as well as combating contemporary agricultural practices with mycelium-based foods. The packaging materials are biodegradable, strong, lightweight, moldable, inexpensive, energy efficient, fire resistant, and even use agricultural waste, which is abundant. Large companies like Dell and IKEA have already incorporated mycelium packaging into their practices, as well as countless other small businesses trying to reduce their carbon footprint. I see this utilization of mycelium as a crucial step in the general education of the world and the United States about fungus. This change in culture will in turn cultivate a pursuit of further technical research into the uses of fungus in every aspect of our lives. I believe through research we can determine the truth that will make fungus a lasting, prominent source of inspiration, health, and practical application in the United States and the world. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Skye Freitas, and this segment is about mindsets and why thinking you can is better than thinking you can't. You are limitless. On a warm, sunny school day, me and a friend were waiting on the sidewalk where the bus would later come pick us up and take us to our destination. As we were waiting, I forget what we were talking about or what we were even doing, but as we were huddled up on the sidewalk, she looks up at me and says, you can't do that, you're stupid. Moments later, the girl ran off somewhere, and my teacher at the time comes up to me, kneels down, looks me in the eyes, and tells me, don't ever let anybody ever tell you you are stupid or that you can't do something. You could do anything you set your mind to. My life and my mindset forever changed after that day. Today, I'd like to offer a word of advice on the importance of having an optimistic mindset and how it structured my life for a better and more achievable lifestyle. This especially goes out to anybody in their life that has been told they can't do something because of who they are or where they came from. Never believe that you can't do something or achieve something because of other people's opinions and or jealousies. During this session, I'm going to discuss the two theories behind mindsets, my mindset, and the experiences and the people that help me structure the way I view myself and my abilities to accomplish anything I set my mind to, and if I truly want something, and how parenting and outside peers structured my mindset. A study called Moral Growth Mindset is associated with change in voluntary service engagement by Hahn and Hyman, described two theories, entity theory and incremental theory. Those learners who have an entity theory view intelligence as being an unchangeable, fixed internal characteristics. Those who have an incremental theory believe that their intelligence is malleable and can be increased through effort. Those with an incremental theory are more likely to focus on effort and what they can gain through experience, even in challenging situations. These people tend to view failure as a signal to work harder and exert more effort accepting the challenge. On the other hand, those with an entity theory tend to focus on the result of experience and are more likely to attribute failure to their own personal shortcomings. A leading expert in motivation and personality psychology, Carol Dweck, has discovered that our mindset is not a minor personality quirk. It creates our whole mental world. It explains how we become optimistic or pessimistic. It shapes our goals, our attitude toward work and relationships, and how we raise our kids, ultimately predicting whether or not we will fulfill our potential. As an individual who's been told they can't go to college because I'm not smart enough, that I didn't have enough money to get to college, that I shouldn't try out for the talent show because I couldn't sing, that I couldn't play football because I'm a girl, I'm also an individual that worked their butt off to get where I stand today, and an individual that worked 2 jobs, went to high school, played sports, just to put some savings in an account for college, a person who tried out for the talent show and ended up winning first place her senior year of high school, a girl who tried out for flag football, and powder puff, and made every single team. However, this wasn't an easy process, and I couldn't have done it without the people in my life telling me that I can do it. In an article called The Power of Parenting, Brooks states, nurturing resilience should be understood as a vital ingredient in the process of parenting every child. Whether that child has been burdened by adversity or not, resilience is the capacity to respond in healthy and productive ways when faced with adversity and trauma. It is essential for managing the daily stress of life, but we have come to realize that the same skills of resilience are important to broadening and enriching one's life as they are to recover from setbacks. Therefore, me having supportive parents who supported anything I did, from the clothes on my back to my future goals, and having supporting teachers along my academic career, reassuring me that I can do this and that I have so much potential, really pushed me to strive for a successful life for myself. In another article called The Mindset Advantage, How Your Mental Frame Affects Your Behavior and Performance by Thomas Upwong, mindsets aren't just any beliefs. They are beliefs that orient our reactions and tendencies. They serve a number of cognitive functions. They let us frame situations. They direct our attention to the most important cues so that we're not overwhelmed with information. They suggest sensible goals so that we know what we should be trying to achieve. They prime us with reasonable courses of action so that we don't have to puzzle out what to do. When our mindsets become habitual, they define who we are and who we can become. In conclusion, one of the biggest lessons I've learned from this is you can do anything you set your mind to. You are limitless. Anybody can tell you can't achieve something, but ultimately, if you set your mind to it and make the decision that you can, then you will.
Hi, my name is Sydney Shively. Do you believe your sex education has properly prepared you? Has your sex education even discussed the topic of consent and boundaries? I wish to present to you a problem, and that problem being that if consent is not properly discussed or taught within sex education, students out of high school may develop different or harmful interpretations of consent and be put into dangerous situations because of their lack of knowledge on the concept. This would include both abstinence-only and abstinence-plus, or comprehensive sex education, programs. Although abstinence-plus programs address issues of pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, and safe sex, the topic of consent is either overlooked or taught to a minimum with an objective perspective and little attention to the responsibility to consent to another or to our own bodies. As such, this discussion is an argument to consider reforming sex education in order to discuss consent. The significance of sex education is to help communicate the topic of sex in an open environment in which students are allowed to ask questions and learn about a topic that would be harder to discuss in other environments. In some cases, students do not feel comfortable addressing human sexuality with their parents or friends, and might go to other resources to be educated. Those resources can include pornography, outdated information, or inexperienced friends. If they are led on by these resources, young adults might be given misinformation on what is considered consensual and non-consensual sex. Young adults often are not exposed to education on the topic of consent until college. Without clear understanding of what consent or sexual assault is, these adults may become victims or perpetrators without knowledge of it. Thomas Miller, the author of the essay Towards a Performance Model of Sex, discusses the discourse taught within abstinence-only programs, as well as the cultural influence on the commodity model of sex. The commodity model of sex is based on the perception that sex is something to have and to be gained by men and to be preserved by women. The commodity model reflects much of the cultural and religious influences on gender norms and sexuality. It also gives a pass for young men who commit sexual assault, as the commodity model is based on the notion that it is mentioned in Miller's essay. If someone tries to take something and the owner raises no objection, then that something is free for the taking. This is why the commodity model plays a big role in the gender gap of understanding what constitutes consent in sex education. Teaching consent before college is essential due to the rising number of sexual assault cases before and after college. The rise of sexual assault could be due to lack of discussions about gender, emotional boundaries, and sexual boundaries. In regards to sex education, Santelli in their study, Does a Sex Education Before College Protect Students from Sexual Assault in College?, finds that students who experience more comprehensive sex programs generally described sex ed as awkward and focused on STIs, HIV, and pregnancy and contraception, mostly condoms. Even among students who received more comprehensive education, few described receiving education about sexual assault. One of the problems we face in terms of obtaining better sex education that discusses consent is that the state laws that pertain to sex education is a patchwork system. And Planned Parenthood in 2018 states that decisions about sex education are made at the state and local level. No federal laws dictate what sex education should look like or how it should be taught in schools. And only 24 states and the District of Columbia mandate sex education. And even in those states, there's no guarantee that the sex education provided is of high enough quality or covers the topics young people need to learn to stay healthy. And unfortunately, sex education is constantly under attack by legislators who desire to limit sex education, whether it be focusing on abstinence-only sex education or removing sex education entirely from schools, either for religious or cultural reasons and biases. Going deeper into the content of our sex education within many states, the Center for American Progress states that, according to state laws and education standards, only 10 states and the District of Columbia mention the terms healthy relationships, sexual assault, or consent in their sex education programs. If we actually had content in our sexual education to properly examine healthy relationships and consent, we could see a shift in thinking among our youth and perhaps curb the rise of sexual assault among many young adults. In conclusion, our youth has to deal with a patchwork system that gives inconsistent sex education depending on the state and local area. It allows our legislators to pick and choose what they want to be taught to children, whether for good or bad. Many of these things chosen to be talked about in sex education do not include in-depth discussions about healthy boundaries or consent. In this refusal to teach kids about this type of topic, we are only damaging our youth by holding back knowledge they need for their future relationships. I can only hope that this discussion can be pushed for more in our current age as the political climate changes once again. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Jordan Hobba, and I'm here to talk about climate change and the effects it's going to have on the hospitality industry. If you ask someone where their favorite place in the world is rarely a place they grew up in or reside currently. More than likely, you can relate to having been on a trip or vacation that has still held significance to you. Perhaps this trip broadened your horizons or perspectives on the world of various cultures. Perhaps you were able to see the world in a larger wet lens than ever before. Or perhaps you just had a fun and relaxing time. It is for all these reasons that the hospitality industry has remain successful throughout various economic ups and downs. Humans love to travel and get out of their day-to-day surroundings. Being able to travel and experience various cultures is a privilege in its own, and one that is under serious threat due to the effects of climate change. With tourism being defined as the activities of persons traveling to and staying in places outside their usual environment for not more than one consecutive year by the World Tourism Organization in its paper Climate Change and Tourism Respond to Global Action, it is clear that tourism in itself has had a negative effect on the world's ecosystem. However, if this industry wishes to continue, various changes must be made to accommodate for the fast-changing repercussions of climate change. The first step to sustainability in the hospitality industry is awareness. Many hotels and resorts have already done their part by promoting sustainability on their property by encouraging guests to be green. As a survey by the World's News Resource suggests that 60% of travelers leave their green habits behind when they are away from home. Some resorts, like the Gaia Napa Valley Hotel and Spa, display real-time readings of the hotel's utility and carbon dioxide emissions and water usage in the lobby for guests to use. Other hotels encourage guests to reuse towels in an effort to limit clean water use. Although knowing people's tendencies for overuse and complete excess, more needs to be done by both the hotels and the guests to create a sustainable environment. There is some hope, however, for the sustainability of the hospitality industry. The Cornell Hospitality Institute has put forth much effort in monitoring carbon levels and waste levels in the hotel industry since the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. This increasing awareness has led to decreasing carbon emissions from hotels and resorts worldwide since 2013. However, water usage intensity has remained relatively the same, most likely because it is harder to control than overall energy output of a hotel due to guest usage. However, some resorts like the many in Palm Springs use an absurd amount of water to upkeep things like golf courses, swimming pools, and highly impractical areas. The issue in the desert is playing a major role in California's water shortage and is highly unsustainable. Although tourism plays a major part in the economy of places like Palm Springs, the devastating effects on the ecosystem needs to be prioritized, or increasing temperatures and fresh water shortages will eventually lead to the death of the economic success in this area anyway. Aside from awareness, most of the damage is too far gone to be avoided. U.S. Geological Survey suggests that sea levels could rise 19 inches by 2050. This means that many of the coastline hotels and resorts will be forced to relocate or struggle with upkeep. Although upkeep may be economical in the short term, the smart long-term solution would be start building resorts with the knowledge of rising sea level in mind. Many of the states in the southern border, like Florida, Louisiana, have to deal with increasingly bad hurricanes and storms that have left resorts in desperate need of repair. In aftermath of the recent disaster of Hurricane Dorian, which devastated the Bahamas in the strongest storm ever recorded to hit the area, a storm surge raised water levels by as much as 15 feet above sea level. This kind of weather will only become more severe as time goes on, the ice caps continue to melt and sea levels continue to rise. Although climate change will no doubt drastically alter the course of the hospitality industry, there is faith that as long as people have money, they will dream of spending it on vacation and traveling. There is no avoiding the curiosity of human nature in this sense, so the only option is to adapt to the current changes. Obviously, it would be great if there was cleaner alternatives to flying, but if you still wish to travel by plane to a destination, there are many ways to decrease your carbon footprint on your stay. Refrain from overusing water and be mindful enough to practice the same sustainability practices on vacation as you do at home. In addition, thousands of hotels along the coastline should begin to prepare for rising sea levels and unusual weather patterns. As important as it is for a hotel to have sustainable practice, the location of the hotel is just as important in its relationship to the environment and its resources. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed something today about the future of your vacations and the impact you may have on your environment.
Thank you for watching. This has been Comm Perspectives as part of the Capstone course in the Communication Department at Humboldt State University.